Recently, business activities in Africa's largest economy nearly ground to a halt because of fuel scarcity. Now, another scarcity may be on the horizon. Nigeria's independent petroleum marketers are threatening to withdraw their services if the country does not regulate prices charged by private oil depots. We take a look at the issue and assess the government's ability to put out this fire before it starts and costs the economy billions. Across the continent, Kenya Airways has secured a court order to stop its pilots from going on strike. On today's show, we find out why the airline's pilots are striking and look at why the airline has failed to make a profit in the past 10 years. And it's Wednesday. And on Wednesdays, we don't just crush on women, we celebrate their business stories too. Today, we speak to a woman who is smashing through the glass ceiling in international trade. She's the CEO of a food company that exports goods worldwide. In her industry, she's one of only 15%. This is Business Edge. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Let's start with the African business headlines. In East Africa, Uganda's finance ministry says the country is planning to borrow 455 million euros, about $452 million, via a syndicated loan from Standard Chartered and other lenders to pay mainly for infrastructure. The borrowing is likely to stoke fresh worries about the country's ability to repay its rapidly expanding debt. As a percentage of gross domestic product, public debt is now just under the 50% mark. The Finance Ministry is seeking Parliament's approval for the loan that will also be used for other projects. There is no timeline as to when Parliament could give authorization. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame says that the process towards a single currency for the countries that form the East African community is years behind schedule. During a meeting of the Legislative Assembly of the 7-member bloc in Kigali, Kagame said the EAC is currently underfunded, which is delaying the implementation of projects and programs. He added that despite the delay, the East African Monetary Institute was necessary for achieving the monetary union. Analysts say that political and economic rows between the bloc of 7 countries have been delaying implementation of agreements. We move now to North Africa, where Tunisia's government has vowed to rework its pivotal subsidy system next year, deepening a rift with the country's most powerful labor union over reforms that may be critical to finalizing an International Monetary Fund deal. The country's economy and planning minister, Samir Said, said authorities have no choice but to adhere to pledges made in reaching a pact on the 48-month, $1.9 billion IMF arrangement. Noureddine Taboubi, the Secretary General of Tunisia's powerful labor union, UGTT, said the commitment is unacceptable. Tunisia has turned to the IMF as it struggles to keep its economy afloat after the pandemic. There are no details yet as to the conditions of the deal. And still with IMF news, the fund has expected that Libya will record the fastest economic growth in 2023 at 17.9%, while the oil economy will grow by about 22%. The fund's report shows that the rise in crude oil prices and the strong growth of non-oil GDP are offsetting the impact of rising food prices due to the Russian-Ukraine war. Due to the production cuts decided by the OPEC Plus group and with the decline in oil prices, the growth of the economies of oil countries will decline by an expected 3.5%. Inflation in North Africa and the Middle East regions will range between 12.1 and 11.2% in 2023, compared with 2022, in which it ranged between 11 and 8.6%. In Southern Africa, South Africa's Reserve Bank governor says the bank still has space to raise interest rates, pointing to inflation expectations that are less anchored around the midpoint of its target range than it would like. The South African Reserve Bank has raised interest rates at its last 6 monetary policy meetings in a bid to get inflation under control. Its next decision is due later this month. South Africa's headline consumer inflation slowed to 7.5% in September from 7.6% in August, but it is still well above the Reserve Bank's 3 to 6% target range. And those are a few business headlines from here on the continent. When we come back, the conversation starts. We're talking Nigeria as petroleum marketers say there could be a strike looming. We'll also be in East Africa as Kenya Airways is taking on its airline pilots and we'll be looking at a woman in business in exporting and importing. Do stay with us. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria is saying it may withdraw its services over the incessant increment in the price of the petroleum motor spirit in the eastern parts of Nigeria. Now, in a statement, the association laid the blame at the feet of private depots for the hike in price. IPMAM members say they are buying from depots at 185 naira per litre, noting that after adding other expenses, the price increases to 200 naira per litre. The marketers have said that even at that 200 naira per litre, their businesses are not thriving, considering the high cost of diesel to power the stations and the exploitation from private tank depot owners, as well as the Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG. I have Ukadike Chinedu, the National Public Relations Officer of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, with me now to look at this. Ukadike, in the past few days, particularly here in Lagos, we can see the queues already building because of, in some instances, some have said your statement has made people a bit apprehensive about the potential. So we know that there's a government-approved pump price, and then there's the actual price that petroleum is sold around the country. Where is the difference, and why is there a difference? Let's start there. All right. Unfortunately, it looks like we've just quickly lost the guest. We're going to make connection with him, but this conversation is one in the past few days, starting from over the weekend, particularly in Lagos, fuel queues, myself included. I've been one of those who've had to experience it, and the queues have returned in Lagos. Many Nigerians are not particularly sure what's happening with the queues, why they're back just a few weeks after a fuel scarcity that almost ground many business activities in Lagos and around the country to a halt. Now this fuel scarcity, or the fuel queues, let's say, is back. And the conversation is one that, if you step outside of Lagos, you'll see that it's a completely different conversation. The pump price that has been set officially by the government, many say, only exists in places like Lagos, Abuja, occasionally Ibadan, maybe Port Harcourt. But beyond that, and even in some of these cities other than Lagos, you will find that the price is above what the government has set. Ukadike, I think we're back with you now.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So please, let's start with the difference between the price that the government has set and the price that is actually, we see PMS being sold around the country. Why is there a difference?
Okay, well, to be honest with you, when the government started with the price regime, and they determined the profit of marketers, and price products will be sold because of the flexibility and fluctuation of dollar. Because we are heavily dependent on importation of petroleum products, and any petroleum products consumed in this country are imported from overseas. So they have the logistics to contend with. They also have the dollar exchange rate to contend with. So the price originally that was given to independent marketers was at about 145, 147 for us to sell at 165. So you can see the profit margin is around 10, 11 naira. So no matter the huge amount of funds that we put in and the risk we also take, and management of our filling stations at various places, both in the hinterland and the capital area. Now, when this fluctuation also started, it started gradually because all independent marketers can even source petroleum products from PPMC depots. We normally source our petroleum products now from private tank farm owners. And these private tank farm owners are located along the riverine areas of the country. That is in Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Calabar, and Warri, precisely. So this enables marketers to move to those private tank farm owners and be able to source these petroleum products at their own price and at their own pace. Sometimes our marketers' money will remain in their hands for 2-3 weeks, sometimes 1 month, 2 months, without even collecting the product. So it's not becoming so difficult because the competition of which takes place the petroleum depot owners is the PPMC depots. And the PPMC is most of the depots are now obsolete, especially in the eastern part of this country and the south part of this country, or even in also some part of the western zone and northern part of the country. Most of the PPMC depots are not working. It's one depot in Nigeria and have been dispensing petroleum products to independent marketers.
Okay.
So this started gradually, and until we got ourselves to around 180, 182, 185 naira per litre.
All right, so because we will touch base on this issue around the private depots and the NNPC depots, but what it looks like is that the deregulation that many people across Nigeria have shied away from is already happening. It's happening across the country because not everybody is able to sell at the government-approved price. So let me put this to you, Ikadike. Does IPMAN support a full and official deregulation of the industry so that market forces will determine the price of PMS at the pump for Nigerians?
We all agreed for deregulation. Even when the Katiku was the minister, he brought in this policy of quantity deregulation, and which determines petroleum price as it affects the exchange of dollars in the international market. But recently we are aware that over 3 trillion of naira has been used for subsidy, and still what we still have is still happening. If we say we are going to deregulate the market, and we don't have another internal force that will determine the importation of petroleum products and the prices, it will skyrocket. By the time you know it, petroleum products will be sold at 450 naira because it's imported, and those who import it will determine how much they sell the product. So if we have a local content where our refineries are working, our refineries can produce and be able to tune or substitute the importation of petroleum products, because you can see our dollar, our naira, heavily touching dollar at any particular point in time to be able to buy petroleum products and satisfy domestic yearning. And because of this yearning, federal government is going all out to ensure that because the petroleum products drive the system, it drives the economy. So the federal government is doing everything possible to ensure that they continue to subsidize this product to enable us to not have chaos and they don't have shortage of petroleum products in the country, because it will lock down the system of the country.
Okay.
So that's the position we find ourselves. You cannot talk about deregulation now, full deregulation, without fixing our refineries, without bringing in more refineries, local refineries to compete, without opening the modular refineries, which federal governments have given some people license. And up to now, they are not started working. And the biggest aspect of it is that some of the local refineries that are also functioning are also selling this product at a rate in this international standard market.
Okay, so you've mentioned the federal government in your statement asking them to revive all NNPC depots, particularly within the eastern zone, so that IPMEN members can get PMS at the regulated price. But I remember this was also one of the issues with the fuel scarcity that happened just a few months ago, was the issue of the landing cost for the petrol that was coming in, and then, of course, the cost that the marketers were picking it up. In terms of this NNPC situation, how long ago, or when was the last time your members actually were able to get PMS from any NNPC depot, particularly in the eastern parts of the country?
I can't even remember. But I know quite all right that for the past 5 years, we have been heavily dependent on PDOs. Sometimes skeletally, they might just go skeletal or epileptically. They might know like 10 to 15 trucks or 30 trucks in an NNPC. They will say it's mock-up of their old products in NNPC's facilities. So that is not floating. Most of our members' money is still being tied down in PPMC accounts. So we don't have even confidence in going to PPMC buy petroleum products now, because it is very you get it. So we resort to private bank components. And I also believe that These same private tank farm owners source their products from NNPC. So you ask yourself, why don't NNPC use their own facility? Why did they resort to tank farm owners? We have asked that question, and the MD was saying that it's because of pipeline vandalization, it's because of insecurity, it's because of some of this, they don't want to use some of these products. And we have security agencies that can man those, even if man at this point, we offer to help. We see that we can be able to checkmate this issue of pipeline vandalization and rest of it. We have said this time with that number that Mr. President, who is the Minister of Petroleum, should declare a state of emergency in the oil refineries and ensure that all our refineries are working to at least 70% optimal condition. It will reduce all this profiteering and racketeering by some of the cabals who are using these ugly opportunities to smite the bank.
Okay, so your complaint is not only about the private depots and the cost there. The statement also has mentioned, of course, the union fee paid to NUPENG. And NUPENG, again, for those who don't know, is the Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers. This issue has been a long-standing one. What do you think will take? What do you think it will take to finally resolve that issue with NUPENG?
Well, sometimes people go on air to make some assertions that are baseless. For us, the Independent Petroleum Market Association, we don't have any problem with NUPENG. Okay. And what the person misconstrued it, what they are trying to say is that the products we buy from private tank farms are much exorbitant that we cannot be able to sell at a government-approved price. If we go to private tank farms today, it will be at 182. The next day, they will add 185. And if you buy at 185, you also still pay your drivers or your transporter to take the petroleum products to your station. You also have to pay your workers. And you also have to buy diesel that is almost getting to 900 naira per litre now to run that your business. So our overall costs and overhead costs is giving us a very big problem that some computers now see us as those who are profiteering when we don't. So that is the problem. The issue is not about NUPENG. We don't have any problem with NUPENG. We have a very good relationship with NUPENG. But the problem is that it was misconstrued because when we go to the depot to buy some products from the depot, you will find out that the product you have just paid for 180 naira, the next day is 185. And you have to augment that money to buy it. If you don't buy it, your situation will remain fallow. So it was a kind of misconception.
All right, so Ukadike, before I let you go, I have to ask the question Nigerians would likely need to know. There are queues right now, but we've heard from the NNPC that they have more than enough petroleum products. Is IPMAN prepared to go on strike over this issue? The statement said that it could be a strike in order to get this situation taken care of. But what we do know is that the naira situation at this point, your members are saying they can no longer afford to continue paying what they're paying. Are you in conversation with government on how this can be handled? Should we be preparing for another strike?
Well, the National President of IPMAN, Alhaji Tebum Ahmed, has had a meeting with the NNPC, in as much as you know now that there is a reshufflement of management staff of NNPC. So the entire system is a little bit in a comatose because the new management is coming in and the old management is going out. Some of this exchange of management also truncates the smooth running of the organization because it's not a corporate entity. It's a business entity now. They are acquiring new stations. They are doing a lot of things at the same time. So the essence of independent marketers going on strike now does not arise because we're almost on strike. You know, we don't have products in our stations. Once the independent marketer doesn't have products, it's on strike. So the strike is becoming natural because we cannot be able to afford this product. The good cost of buying this product, the minimal profit we make from it, and the services we render to the public, and the hazard that is associated with it. Look at this issue of this fraud. Most of our tanker drivers has been out there for the past 7 days. No policy from government. For the past 10 days, 20 days, no policy from government. The roads are bad. Some tankers have fallen. No policy from government. So we have asked for policies to be able to find alternative routes. So those alternative routes require more diesel. But also now, the management of the NNPC could not be able to sit down with us, or the federal government, or Ministry of Labour, could not be able to sit down with us and look at the challenges the independent marketers are facing, so that it will not be transcended to or transmitted to the public. Because once somebody has spent so much money to be able to supply the petroleum product all the way from Lagos, passing Lokoja, using alternative routes that will consume to 4 to 7 drugs, when it gets to Yola, they will sell that petroleum product at 250 naira to be able to get back his capital and make minimal profit, very minimal profit. Because independent marketers, we are service oriented.
All right, Ukadike Chinedu, thank you so much. We'll be following up with this conversation as it pans out. I know there are hundreds of negotiations right now in queues and probably thousands of Nigerians preparing for another fuel scarcity. But if there are updates, we look forward to talking to you about them.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. And my guest has said we are not on strike. We don't want to go on strike, but because of the situation, it does seem like there is a natural strike happening because members of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria cannot afford to pick up the petrol at the private depots that are supplying. Where is the NNPC? Where is the government? And some might even ask, where is the Minister of Petroleum, who is President Muhammadu Buhari? We'll take a quick break. When we come back, international business stories.